Hello everyone, today we're going to look at the profit function and the break-even point. The profit function, which we call P of X, is how much money you make. And it's the difference between what it costs to produce your units and what you sell them for. And that is exactly R of X minus C of X, the revenue minus the cost. Now remember, the cost is a binomial, it's a line, so make sure you are distributing that negative sign across those two different units, the something times x and the constant. The Vx and the F both have to be subtracted. So given the cost and revenue functions, find the profit function. So we have C of x is 350x plus 12,000 and R of x equals 400x. When we subtract them, we have 400x minus, in parentheses, 350x plus 12,000. So make sure, again, you distribute that negative sign. So 400x minus 350x is the 50x minus the 12,000. So the profit function is also going to be a line, and the y-intercept is always the negative of the y-intercept of the cost function, because you're always subtracting that part. How about if the cost function is 25x plus 800 and the revenue function is 40x? So again, we take the 40x and subtract both parts of the cost function. So 40x minus 25x minus 800. That'll give us 15x minus 800. And again, the y-intercepts are just opposite signs. And then as our third one, C of x equals 200x plus 575. R of x is 350x. If I subtract R of x minus C of x, I get 150x minus 575. Notice that for our profit function to make sense, our slope has to be positive. We have to be making money the more items that we produce and sell. Otherwise, there's no point in having this business. So remember, the slope of R always has to be bigger than the slope of the cost. I have to sell it for more than what it cost me to make it. And that's going to give me a positive slope here for my profit. When dealing with the profit function, the break-even point is when the profit is zero. Remember, the break-even point, I'm not making money, I'm not losing money, my profit is zero. So find the break-even number of units for the following profit functions. If you're given the profit function, then you're usually just asked to find the break-even number of units versus the break-even point when you're given the revenue and the cost. So I don't care about the point here because I know the profit is zero by definition. Okay, so I'm just looking for the x. So A, P of x equals 35x minus 700. So I'm going to set that equal to 0 and then solve for x. So again, the profit function happens to be a really nice line, so we know how to solve those. I'm going to bring my constant over. So I have 35x equals 700 and then divide by my coefficient. So 700 divided by 35 is 20, so x equals 20. If I sell 20 items, I will have broke even. If I sell less than 20, then I lost money. If I sell more than 20, then I've made a positive profit. How about P of x equals 500x minus 20,000? So the process is going to be the same. We set it equal to 0. We add the constant over, and then divide by the coefficient. So in this case, x equals 40. How about we graph all three functions? Clearly labeling the break-even point. So again, here it's the point. I need the x and y values if I want to graph it. And there are two different types of the break-even point. There's the break-even point where the cost equals the revenue, and then there's the break-even point on the profit function. So we're going to see how they're the same and how they're a little different. So we're given that C of x equals 60x plus 300 and R of x equals 90x. So before I can graph the three functions, I need to find the three functions. I'm given C and R, so the first step is to find P. So remember, I'm going to take my R and subtract my C. So 90 minus 60 is going to be 30, so I'll have 30x minus 300. Next, I'm going to find the break-even point. So I can do it one of two ways. I can either set the cost equal to revenue and solve for x that way, or I can set the profit equal to 0 and solve for x that way. Either way, I'm going to get the same x values. So since I have the profit, I'm just going to set it equal to 0 and then solve for x. So again, I'm going to add the 300 over, divide by 30, and we should be getting 10. So I want you to go back and double check all this math, but you should be getting 10. So for the profit function, I have the point 10, 0. Remember, the profit is 0 and x is 10. So on the profit graph, we have the point 10, 0, and we also have the y-intercept. So now I have the 2 points for the profit, and that's all I need to graph the profit. In order to graph the cost and revenue, I have their y-intercepts. Right, 300 for C is 0 for R. Remember, it always goes to the origin. And then I also have their break-even point. So their break-even point is still x equals 10, but now I need to plug it into either C or R to find the y value for those two. So if I plug it into the revenue function, I have 90 times 10, that's 900. So my break-even point is associated with two different points. I've got the break-even point on the profit, something, 0, and I have the break-even point on the cost and revenue where they're equal. So the x value is still the same, but the y value is going to be different. So I've got 10,900 for the cost and revenue, both of them. And then again I have, whoops, that didn't come out very well. I have the point 10, 0 for the profit. So when it comes time to drawing my graph, I'm going to be using those y-intercepts and our break-even point. So what I have to do is decide how I want to write my x values on the x-axis and how I want to write my y values on the y-axis. Notice that the x values, I really only have two of them. I have the 0 because I have my y-intercepts, and then I also have the 10. And just like before, I want to keep my break-even point somewhere near the middle. So I'm going to choose 10 to be in the middle, and then kind of just do it around that. So I've got my 10 that I'm putting in the middle. Now I need to look at my y values. So my y values, again, are 0, 300, negative 300, and 900. Those all happen to be really nice multiples of 300, so I'm going to go by 300s. So before, when we just had cost and revenue, we didn't have negatives. We only needed quadrant 1. But now a profit can be negative, so we do have this quadrant 4 down here. So I'm going to include those, and everyone's going to go by 300. I don't really have much room, so I'm going to kind of write it over here. 300, that's 900. Okay, so each of those tick marks are going to be 300. So when I go to draw them, I have my points, 0, 0 for the revenue. I have 0, 300 for the cost. I have 0, negative 300 for my profit. So those are the y values, the y-intercept of my three lines. And then I have the break-even points. So for the profit, again, I have 10, 0. And for the cost and revenue, I have 10, 900. You're right around there. And then I'm going to use a different color for each graph so that we know which ones we're looking at. So the cost, I'm going to do in blue. That was a little thick. Let me make that skinnier line there. And that's going from the 0, 300 up to our 10, 900. And then I will do revenue in green. So that's going through the origin and that same 10,900 point. And then lastly, I'll do in black my profit function. So that is going between the other 2 points that I haven't drawn a line through yet. So we have 3 different lines, 2 of which intersect at the break-even point 10,900. The other one, the profit, is much below them because remember it's the difference between the 2 lines. So if we look at our picture, and I know I've kind of got a lot of things going on here, let me try to erase some of it. Okay. So after I've cleaned it up a little bit, everywhere where the cost function, the blue one, is above the revenue, the green, the profit is negative. So we've got our profit below the x-axis whenever the cost is on top of the revenue. As soon as the cost and revenue are equal, the blue and green lines intersect, that is where the profit is 0. As soon as the revenue is more than the cost, or the green line is above the blue line, then the profit is positive, and we've got our black line above the x-axis. Okay? Let's try another one. Cost function is 20x plus 5,000. The revenue is 400x. So again, I'm going to need my quadrants 1 and 4 because the profit can be negative. Again, the first thing I want to do is find the profit function, and that should be 200x minus 5,000. Okay, so again, 400 minus 200 is the other 200, so the 200x, and then the y-intercept is the negative of the y-intercept for the cost. To find the break-even points, I'm going to set my profit equal to 0, and then solve. So I'm going to add the 5,000 over, divide by the 200, and I get 25. So again, for the profit, I have the point 25, 0, and for the revenue and cost, I'm going to plug in the 25, and 25 times 400 is 10,000. So that gives me 25, 10,000 for R and C, and again 25, 0 for the profit. Okay. So now that we have all the points we need, we have the y-intercepts, they're right there for us. We have our break-even points. We can talk about graphing them. So I'm going to change my color back to black. And again, I want my break-even point to be somewhere near the middle. So I'm going to call that 25. I could do more hash marks if I wanted. Right, each one of these would be 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. You know, label some of them enough to know what they're going by. They're going by 5s. And then as far as the y values go, you know, our y-intercepts, we have 5,000 from the cost, 0 from the revenue, negative 5,000 from the profit, and then we also need 10,000 from the break-even point. So I'm going to go by 5,000 since those are really nice. I don't have a whole lot of room here, so I'm going to try to write this sideways. Okay, so again, just label enough so that we know what they're going by. So they're going by 5,000s. And then we have the points. So again, we've got 0, 0 from the revenue. I'll make that a little bit bigger. And then we've got 5,000 from the cost. We've got negative 5,000 from the profit. And then those are our y-intercepts for our 3 lines. And then the break-even points. So for the profit, it's 25, 0. And for the cost and revenue, it's 25, 10,000. So right around there. Okay, and then the last thing we got to do is connect them for our 3 lines. So again, I'm going to use 3 different colors. For the cost, I'm going to use red. And then just make sure that you're connecting the right 2 points for these. And make sure that you do label them. So I'm doing them with different colors. If you have the same colors, then at least, you know, label them. C for cost, R for revenue, and so on. So my C is in red. My revenue will be in blue. That's going to go through that same break-even point, but through the origin as well. And I'll call it R. And then the profit, I'll make green, and that's the other 2 points that I haven't used. P for profit. And again, whenever the cost is more than the revenue, we have a negative profit. When the revenue is bigger than the cost, we have a positive profit. And where our revenue is equal to our cost, we have a 0 profit. So let's try one more. The cost is 20x plus 2,000. The revenue is 30x. So again, the first thing we want to do is find the profit. And that should be 10x minus 2,000. Next, to find the break-even points, we set the profit equal to 0, add the 2,000, divide by 10, and we've got 200. Plug that into the revenue or the cost. Again, it shouldn't matter which one you do it to. Either way, you should be getting 6,000. So for the cost and revenue function, we have the point 200 comma 6,000. And for the profit function, we have 200 comma 0. So when it comes time to graphing it, again, I want to look at the x values, and the only x values besides 0 that we have are 200. So I'm going to put that in the middle, and then I'll just go by 100s. And then for the y values, for the y-intercepts, we have 2,000 from the cost, 0 from the revenue, negative 2,000 from the profit, and then we also have the point 200 comma 6,000. So those are all really nice multiples of 2,000, so I'm going to go by 2,000s for my tick marks. And again, it's kind of hard to write here, so I'll try my best. 2k, 6k, negative 2k on the bottom, so each one's going to go by 2,000. And then to plot the points, again, the y-intercepts, we have negative 2,000, 0, and 2,000. For the x-intercept, for the profit, is 200 comma 0. And then we have the break-even point, 200 comma 6,000. That's right around there. And then to graph them, again, I'm going to use 3 different colors. So for the cost function, I'll do it in red. It's going to be this line here. For the revenue, I'll do it in blue. Again, they're going to intersect at that 200 comma 6,000. And then the profit is the only one that we have negative values for. Okay. So again, the revenue is below the cost. We have a negative profit. We're losing money. The revenue is above the cost. We have a positive profit. We're making money. Okay, so make sure that you've read through the book, try out the homework, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.